Let's talk about Unreal Engine 5, Lumen, Nanite, and VR. In this video, I'll guide you through my thought process, my troubleshooting process, and my kind of optimization steps of how to get Lumen to work in your Unreal Engine scene with VR. Because technically, Lumen is not supported in VR applications. So there's a lot of kind of not hacky things, but a lot of optimizations and kind of things to consider, things that you need to consider as you're going this route. Okay, so let's jump right into it. First of all, let me introduce you to the scene. We have a Nakagan capsule tower, the interior of it. We have a few trees here, and we have like a weird sculpture that can move. And all of these will be used to test out different things and to showcase different problems. Oh yeah, and we are surrounded with nanite meshes here as well. Okay, so the first thing that I will do is I'll of course play. Let me just showcase it to you, right? And once it loads in, there we go. Now we're at somewhere around 45 frames per second. And if I were to press button 1, I'll show you how to do that later. We're dropping down to scalability settings 0, which is low quality. And now we're at 90 frames per second. Notice how it caps out at 90 frames per second with 11 milliseconds for the frame draw. This is an important thing that we'll come back to in just a second. It does not go beyond that. If I press number 2, then, oh, by the way, the file, I will make it available for everyone to download. So it's going to be in the video description below. So you can run it for yourselves as well. So if I press number 2, we're still at 90 frames per second. Our game draw is 11 milliseconds. Our GPU time is 9 milliseconds. That means that the GPU time and the game time, since they have a gap between them, we can go even further. I mean, we're not capping out our GPU. If I now press, was it 3? Now we are at high settings, right? And yeah, this seems still to be pretty smooth, but now we're at 22 milliseconds, and you can see that our frame rates are for some reason capping at 45 frames per second. Well, they're going around 45 frames per second. They never go beyond. And this is an important notion of how frame reprojection works. The moment my headset currently is running at 90 frames per second, by the way, right? So anything that I see here is still 90 frames per second. So the moment the game cannot reach 90 frames per second, it halves it immediately, and it then reprojects the same frame twice, right? So it initially doubles the frames. And there's a lot of more shenanigans going on with the frames that are being reprojected, so it's not just kind of repeating the same frame, but that's the basic idea of it. 45 frames for me gets doubled into 90 frames, and even if this game could be currently running at 60 frames per second, I would still be getting 45 because the reprojection kicks in, right? If I were to press, was it 3? No, it's 4. Yeah, now it's really checking because we're now at epic settings, right? Okay, so now let's talk about where the 90 frames per second comes from, right? So actually in the Oculus app for my MetaQuest 2, and of course different headsets, different settings, but it's driven by the settings of the headset, clearly, right? So we go, if you're also using MetaQuest, you simply go to your paired device, scroll down here, and where it says the refresh rate is set, 72 Hertz is recommended, I have just set it to 90 Hertz, right? So let me actually drop it down, because you can see that when I have it at 90 Hertz, the render resolution is being dropped, right? So I'm sacrificing frame rate for the resolution, which I don't like that trade-off. So instead I will go for 72 Hertz, which is recommended, and thus the recommended resolution, jumps up. So I'll save and restart. Okay, and now when I play this at 72 frames per second, it's playing. Okay, seems to be okay. And I use the tilde key, which is below the escape key on your keyboard. Click that, opens up a command line, and I write stat FPS, hit enter. Now we're at 35 frames per second with 27 milliseconds calculation time or frame time, right? Which gets, of course, multiplied to, or 36 actually frames per second, which gets multiplied to 72 for me. So again, when I'm looking at this, this is very smooth, definitely a smooth experience. So then if I press the tilde key again and I write stat unit, now I will see all of my draws, right? Or sorry, not draws, but the GPU timing. GPU time 23, 22 milliseconds, and my game timing 27, which technically the way I read it is that I still have 23 to 27, around 4 milliseconds of computing time before this starts going below the 35 frames per second mark that kind of is extrapolated to 72 frames per second. So let me escape out of that and let's see what kind of settings we can change to increase this. So all of my Lumen settings are controlled via the post-processing volume, as it should be. And if I just go to Lumen here, I think I just had it as set to default. Where is it? Global illumination, Lumen global illumination. Okay, so it's almost default. The scene view distance is set to 10 meters and max trace distance is set to 10 meters. Besides that, everything else is defaults. So since my scene is a little bit bigger, I think I should, instead of 10 meters here, I should use like 50 meters. I think that's going to... What's the default? Oh, 200 meters. Okay, so definitely less than that. 50 meters. And then let's just simply increase the final gather quality and the scene lighting quality. These two guys right here. So for now, the final gather quality is always more important than the scene lighting quality, at least for the perception of the quality. So I'll first increase this to 2 and see my timings. What kind of timings do I get? Okay, there we go. So now we're still at around 26, 24. Okay, so we lost 1 millisecond of the GPU time. By the way, if you want to see the actual timings, you can write stat GPU command, and then you get all of the actual timings. And now you can see our Lumen screen probe gather is actually getting is eating the most from the whole scene. This is going to change once we move outside. Stat GPU, we will go back to this. Okay, so technically in this room, we still have just a little bit of freedom to increase the scene lighting quality. So I'll amp it up to 2. We could even go even further, but at this point I would kind of stop and I would not increase the quality any further, because this seems to be running a-okay, and instead I would start investigating what would happen if we increase the pixel density. So another command that you should use if, for instance, let's say you're running at, one second, you're running at 6 frames per second. That's a no-go. So how do you actually make it work? Well, you can always write r dot pixel density 0.5. So your resolution, your pixel density resolution, is dropped by half. And in this case, this didn't work at all. So let me drop the quality lower. But now when I have the quality set to high with the much lower pixel density, you can see that now our frame rates are for some reason at the 60s range, right? With our GPU times being closer to 12 milliseconds. So if I drop this down even further, this is going to look ugly, of course, but our pixel density 0.2, I mean, now it's just a mess. But now our GPU time's at 8 milliseconds. So this is very close to running at 90 frames per second, right? Or 72 in this case, 72 frames per second. And if I just kind of walk around here, yeah, this looks like garbage. Absolutely, because we're only drawing 20% of the pixels, right? But now with this, you can start optimizing and you can start finding the pixel density that kind of works for you. So for instance, our pixel density of 0.8 is honestly not that bad. And it gives us a very stable experience even when we're looking at, the foliage here. So that's definitely a benefit. I mean, right now we are still dropping below 30 frames per second, which is fine. Anything that is above 25 frames per second, I still perceive that to be quite smooth. So it's okay. So technically I could go R pixel density 1. Yeah, and now we're definitely checking. Now it's right on the edge, on the cusp of it not being usable anymore. With that being said, the preview is quite smooth. It's just the hitches. It's starting to hitch, right? So that's the combination of Lumen quality increase as well as the pixel density, staying with a high pixel density. So maybe I will say the final gather closer to 1.5, scene lighting 1.5, something like that. Let's not push our luck. Okay. So before I was showing you how you can change the quality of your, by the way, I don't remember if I mentioned this, sorry. I don't remember if I mentioned this. You can download this scene to check out. It's gonna be in the link in the video description. And another link that you'll see in the description is going to be for Skillshare. Young designers are constantly pushing boundaries, and Skillshare offers the perfect platform to help them thrive. From mastering 3D modeling and creative visualization to exploring graphic design, Skillshare provides the tools to enhance any creative practice. Courses like AI in Design show how to integrate cutting-edge technology into design workflows, allowing designers to innovate and stay ahead in a rapidly evolving industry. With specialized lessons in building a creative career, designers can also develop the skills needed to turn their passion into a successful profession. Skillshare empowers creative minds to grow, stay inspired, and take control of their creative futures. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today, right? So you can download this for free. Okay, so I was showing you how you can do this. Okay. Switching through different quality presets, right? So let me just show you the commands that are making this happen, right? So if I go here to my level blueprint, so that's the blueprint of the level itself. I have a few events here. So these are simple: escape, quit game, begin play. Set the scalability to 2. Scalability 2 is basically high preset, right? And then if you press 1 on your keyboard, scalability is set to low. If you press 2, scalability is set to medium, 3, high, 4, epic. And just as a general note, let's try doing it this way. So if you press 1, you can see like the quality is really bad. I mean, we're at 72 frames per second in a very stable way, but the quality is real bad. There's no light, no shadows, no nothing, right? The jump between 1 and 2 is huge, because suddenly you have light, you have shadows, you have proper textures, and so on. The jump between 2 and 3 is also huge. Indirect illumination, reflections, all of that, right? But then the jump between 3 and 4 is minor. So that's why we use scalability 2 most of the time, because that's the trade-off for scalability 3 for the epic scalability setting is just not worth it. Okay, so that's taken care of, and basically that's the setup, a very simple setup. Okay, let's talk about other settings. So Lumen is pretty straightforward, right? You increase the quality, the frame rate drops, you find the balance. Easy as that. A little bit more nuanced and tricky are the more experimental or VR settings that you can turn on or off. So if I go to settings, project settings here, and under engine, I'll just find rendering, and under rendering, I'll find VR. By the way, these are the settings that I use. Global illumination, Lumen. Reflections, Lumen 128. Hardware ray tracing when available. Surface cache, detail tracing, virtual shadow maps. Seems to work just fine. I'm not using ray traced shadows, because if I use ray traced shadows, then some geometry just messes up like that, and then I need to use a lot of different kind of hacks and things to make it work. Like, what was it? Normal bias set to 3 and blah blah blah, and I just can't be bothered with that, so I have that turned off when we're just using Lumen, or not Lumen, but virtual shadow maps. That seems to be okay. Anyway, not about that. About VR. There we go. Our VR settings. So these are the settings that ideally I would use, especially these top 3, of course. We have stereo foveation level, medium, dynamic foveation, tick marked, and then we have instant stereo, ticked. There's a problem with this. So let me explain what these do. So instant stereo reuses pixels from one eye onto the next, right? From left eye reuses the pixels to the right eye, thus reducing the cost of running two screens, for both eyes. So technically this should increase your frame rates dramatically. And dynamic foveation, as well as stereo foveation level, as well as dynamic foveation, draws lesser density view, so less pixels are drawn in your peripheral vision and more pixels are drawn where you're looking at. In this case, since my headset cannot track my eyes, I think dynamic foveation does absolutely nothing. So I can have this unticked, I think. Just dynamic based on GPU's level range. No, I'm stupid. I'm sorry, I forgot. This is not that. This is basically if your GPU is not used as much, then it's going to draw all the pixels, but if it's being hammered, then it's going to, you know, draw less and less pixels in your peripheral vision. And this is how aggressive it is. I suggest using it as medium because that seems to work the best. I mean, it's most balanced. Instant stereo, let's talk about that. This is important. So ideally this works, and this works well. If I press play now, actually let's move out. Let's move out of here and just let's start the game outside. We're good? We're good. Okay. So stat FPS. I'll just show the FPS. We're at, you know, again, 36 frames per second. We're good to go. Seems to be going quite well. Yeah, everything's pretty stable. But then this structure that I have here, it's actually a dynamic structure, meaning that if I trigger it, it starts transforming, right? It's I did a tutorial on my main channel about this structure. It's pretty neat. We will play with it at the end of this video. But it's transforming. For you, it might seem that, yeah, this seems to be okay. This, you know, my head is shaking. I'm trying to keep it as stable as possible, but this seems to be okay. Until I run VR.spectator screen mode set to 2. So now you can see what each of my eyes see. And then if I trigger this again, do you see a difference? I can go closer. The left eye is fine. The right eye, there is an insane amount of shimmering, and like especially in the reflections, and you can see on the poles, insane amount of shimmering and then this kind of jaggedness that's going on. And that is because it's technically reprojecting the pixels from the part of the screen from left eye to right eye, but it's not doing a great job with moving objects, right? With moving geometries. So as long as nothing moves, instant stereo works just fine. But the moment things are moving, it just breaks down. So I had to, unfortunately, have instant stereo turned off. VR, like that. We'll need to restart, so give me a second. Okay, after restarting, if I press play, of course I need to look around. We use the VR dot spectator screen mode 2. And I just click. Yep, both eyes show exactly, like everything's clear, everything works just fine. And I can even, you know, if I come closer to the columns, you can clearly see, you know, that the columns are not sparkly on both eyes. It's pretty fun. Fun structure. Okay, so that's done. With that being done, let's talk about materials now. With Unreal Engine 5.1 or 5.2 or maybe 5.3, not 5.3, 5.1, I think Substrate materials have been released. And it's an experimental feature that can be enabled through project settings. If you just write substrate materials, experimental, you need to tick mark this. Is experimental, be aware that any material set when substrate is enabled won't be rendered correctly if substrate disabler is disabled later on, right? So I hit OK, asks me to restart, I will restart now. Okay, I have restarted with substrate now working, so all of the materials are running through the substrate pipeline, which is going to be the main pipeline later down the line for Unreal Engine. And let me just press play. If I stat GPS, FPS, not GPS, stat FPS, you know, not that great, a little bit slower. That's the first thing. Second thing is looking at, how do I show you? Well, all of my transparent materials are now gone. That's one thing. There we go. The glass is gone, but that's fine. The most pressing issue is if I do VR spectator screen mode 2. See how useful that is, you know, to understand what's going on. And let me show you. Let's say my arm, both arms. That feels to me like a little bit of a problem, doesn't it? I can't really have it on when this is going because it's really messing with my right eye, but let me just say this. At the time of recording this video, 2023, September 30th, substrate materials should not be used with VR. Absolutely not. Okay, we're back to the normal material settings or material workflow pipeline. So now let's talk about, I guess, the last thing that I want to mention in terms of optimizing your scene for Lumen VR, and that is the anti-aliasing, right? So we're not doing it for mobile, so we don't care, but just in the project settings, I searched for anti-aliasing, and the method here is set to be temporal super resolution. That gives you the best smoothing, but in turn you get this kind of a ghosting effect that some of you might not like. So there are many different anti-aliasing methods there that you can choose from in Unreal Engine, and we're just going to go through them. The problematic thing is, oh, now I messed it up, but the problematic thing is that if we just change them here and we look at the preview, that does not really give us a good understanding of how this is going to look like when we put on the headset. So it's much better to change it with the headset through the command line. So that's what we're going to be doing. Actually, before we do that, let me just explain to you what the numbers in the command line will mean. So here, anti-aliasing method, if I expand this, we have none, fast, temporal, multisampling, and temporal super resolution, TSR, right? These in the command line will be regarded to as 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we will be able to shift through 5 different options from 0 until 4, right? So if I play now, and I think we need to find, is this a good, yeah, I think this is a good place to test it, right? Let's go a bit closer. There we go. And I'll keep my head down so that you can see better. If I write in the command line, if I write r dot anti, or is it not r, just anti-aliasing? Yeah, r dot anti-aliasing method, like that. and I write 0, then there's no anti-aliasing. And actually, let me draw FPS, show FPS. Did I mistype? Oh, stat, not show. Stat FPS. And stat unit. Just to show you the cost of different anti-aliasing methods. So currently our GPU times are at around 29, 28 milliseconds, right? With no anti-aliasing whatsoever. If I change anti-aliasing method to 1, our GPU times are initially the same, maybe even lower, which is weird, that's wild. And now we're getting a little bit of anti-aliased image, right? Still not the best. Also, on the left-hand side, you can see the foveation level kicking in as well. You see that grain on the left-hand side of the screen? That's the foveation level, that's the decrease in the resolution. If I change the method to 2, now everything is much smoother, and our GPU times are actually quite decent. They're still at around 28, which is, I honestly don't understand why. 3. By the way, it's not like we're increasing the quality of anti-aliasing, we're just shifting through different versions, different ways of how you can anti-alias an image. And 4, this one clearly is the most expensive, and this is the one that we're using, right? So that's the TSR, the temporal super resolution. So what I wanted to showcase here is that every other anti-aliasing method except for TSR, for temporal super resolution, is going to be cheap. TSR is expensive in this case, but damn, it looks better. So let me switch back to, I think 2 was pretty good. Yeah. With 2, we are always in the green in terms of the frame rates, and there are absolutely no hitches here whatsoever. Let's play around with a few things here. So if I let me grab the ball and let's go into this structure here. So it's pretty fun in VR because you can just, you can just place a ball right there, press play, and just see this whole thing being kind of interactive. Just see how it behaves, and how just in general how the whole structure works. Also, we have there are like a bunch of tutorials on my main channel of how to do this, but we have ourselves a light control system, so you can find a pretty nice light angle for this whole structure to be showcased better. Whoa. Scary. So this is a pretty gnarly thing. Currently my students are doing structures like these, circular motion into linear motion, and trying to experiment with what kind of architecture can be achieved from that. The battery is low. Oh, a ball for me. Thank you. Oops. Sorry about that. But yeah, so that's the way. Whoop. That's the way it goes. Okay, so we are done with the showcase of the settings and the optimization. Name of the game is for those of you who are saying that the game needs to run at least 72 frames per second natively, I say no, it doesn't. Maybe a competitive game, for sure, it does. But an experience can definitely run at 36 frames per second with, it being smoothed out to 72. It's absolutely usable. I never had any motion sickness issues. I never had anyone have motion sickness issues. Motion sickness starts at around 20 frames per second, or it starts when you have a lot of hitching. So when your frame holds at certain places, then the motion sickness happens. But if everything is kind of running smoothly and just gets reprojected, it's all good. It's all fine. So I hope some of you found this useful and will experiment with your own scenes. By the way, just to kind of repeat all of the things that I said throughout the video, the computer that I use is running RTX 3080 10 gigabytes VRAM version, so a lower end 3080 graphics card with 48 gigabytes of RAM, which are not being utilized, and an i7 10th generation processor. So not the most extravagant machine whatsoever, right? If this was running 4090, we would be at around maybe 72 frames per second natively in this scene. Probably not, but maybe. A boy can dream, can't he? Okay, I'll see you in the next one. Later.